Sienna was always an extraordinary student. From a young age, her mother, a single parent working 2 jobs, emphasized the importance of education. Sienna knew that education was her way out, her path to a better future, and she was determined to make her mother proud. Living in a small town where opportunities for people like her were scarce, she set her sights on one goal: to attend the prestigious Riverside University on a full scholarship. Riverside was renowned not only for its academic rigor, but also for its influential alumni and opportunities. However, it wasn't an easy place to get into, especially for someone like Sienna, who had to fight for every opportunity. Still, she was confident. She had excellent grades, countless community service hours, and was even the valedictorian of her high school. Her teachers believed in her, her community cheered her on, and she applied for the most competitive scholarship at Riverside with high hopes. But Sienna quickly realized that things were not going to go as planned. After waiting anxiously for weeks, she received a letter from Riverside. Her heart pounded as she opened the envelope, her mother standing by her side. "We regret to inform you." The words blurred in her vision as she felt her entire world collapse. She hadn't gotten the scholarship. No reason was given, just a generic statement about the high number of qualified applicants. It didn't make sense. She had done everything right. Her grades, her essays, her extracurriculars. Everything was perfect, and yet she had been rejected. Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "We'll figure something out, Sienna." But Sienna could see the worry in her mother's eyes. Without the scholarship, there was no way they could afford the tuition. It wasn't just about money. It felt like a rejection of her entire existence. The system that had promised her a future was now closing doors in her face. Determined not to give up, Sienna called Riverside's scholarship office, hoping to speak to someone and understand what had gone wrong. After being transferred multiple times, she was finally put on the line with the head of the scholarship committee, a woman named Mrs. Davenport. "Your application was impressive," Mrs. Davenport said in a clipped tone. "However, we only select candidates who meet our criteria for academic and social excellence." Sienna's stomach dropped. "But I had perfect grades, and I've been active in my community." Mrs. Davenport paused for a moment. "While your qualifications are commendable, the committee looks for a specific type of student who fits the Riverside image. Unfortunately, you did not meet all of our expectations." It was clear what she was saying without actually saying it. Sienna, a young black woman from a small town, did not fit the image of Riverside University. Devastated, Sienna was ready to give up. Her mother suggested she look into other schools or take out loans, but Sienna felt that familiar sting of injustice. It wasn't just about money. It was about being judged for something she couldn't change, her race. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Sienna received an email from Dr. Richard Bradley, a tenured professor at Riverside University who taught sociology and had been on the scholarship committee for years. The subject line read, "Let's talk." Curious but cautious, Sienna hesitated before opening the email. "Dear Sienna, I recently came across your application for the Riverside Scholarship, and I wanted to let you know that I was deeply impressed by your qualifications. Unfortunately, I believe there were factors beyond academic merit that influenced the decision. As someone who believes in fairness, I'd like to discuss an alternative opportunity with you. Please let me know if you're interested. Sincerely, Dr. Richard Bradley." Sienna didn't know what to think. She had never met Dr. Bradley and didn't understand why he was reaching out. But his email gave her a glimmer of hope. The next day, Sienna and her mother traveled to Riverside to meet with Dr. Bradley. As they walked through the grand university gates, Sienna couldn't help but feel out of place. The campus was filled with students, most of them white, wearing designer clothes and walking with an air of confidence that Sienna couldn't relate to. Dr. Bradley welcomed them warmly into his office, which was filled with books on social justice, race, and history. His demeanor was kind, and Sienna instantly felt a connection. "I read through your application thoroughly," Dr. Bradley began, "and I'm going to be honest with you, Sienna. You didn't get the scholarship because some people on the committee have a very narrow view of what they think a Riverside student should look like." Sienna's eyes widened. She had suspected as much, but hearing it out loud was shocking. "Isn't that illegal?" her mother asked, her voice tense. "In theory, yes, doctor," Bradley replied. "But these biases are deeply ingrained and they're not always easy to prove. That's why I reached out. I believe Riverside needs students like you, students who have fought against the odds and still excelled." Sienna's heart raced. "So what can I do?" Dr. Bradley smiled. "I've been working on a new scholarship program for students from underrepresented backgrounds, and I believe you would be the perfect candidate. It's not as large as the main scholarship, but it would cover a significant portion of your tuition. More importantly, it would open doors for students like you in the future." Sienna felt a surge of gratitude, but she also felt the weight of the moment. She had worked so hard, and now she had the opportunity to break down barriers, not just for herself, but for others who would come after her. Dr. Bradley wasn't just offering her money, he was offering her a chance to change the system. "I'll take it," Sienna said, her voice filled with determination. As she and her mother left Riverside that day, Sienna couldn't help but feel like this was only the beginning. She had been rejected because of her race, but now, with the help of someone who believed in her, she had the chance to fight back, and fight she would. Dr. Bradley's scholarship program would go on to grow over the years, providing countless opportunities for students like Sienna. And she, in turn, became a vocal advocate for equity in education, never forgetting the professor who had changed everything. As the months passed, Sienna adjusted to life at Riverside University, though it wasn't always easy. Many of the students still looked at her as though she didn't belong. She faced microaggressions, subtle jabs disguised as casual comments about her appearance, her background, or how she must have had help to get into such a prestigious school. The weight of these remarks hung heavy, but Sienna pushed through, determined to prove herself, not to them, but to herself. Dr. Bradley became a mentor to her, meeting with her regularly to discuss not only her academic progress, but also the broader issues she was passionate about. They talked about race, inequality, and the power of education to change lives. He encouraged her to use her voice to become a leader and to push for change even when it felt like the world was against her. By her second year, Sienna began to make a name for herself on campus. She started a student group dedicated to advocating for underrepresented students and organized events highlighting the racial disparities within the university system. Her efforts caught the attention of both students and faculty, sparking important conversations and, more importantly, action. But the real turning point came during a university-wide town hall meeting. The administration had been discussing the future of Riverside's scholarships, and many students were there to voice their opinions. Sienna stood up, nervous but resolute, and shared her story about how she had been denied a scholarship because she didn't fit Riverside's image, and how Dr. Bradley's belief in her had changed everything. The room fell silent as she spoke. "For far too long, this university has turned a blind eye to the systemic biases that keep students like me from succeeding," she said, her voice steady. "I didn't come here to fit in. I came here to make a difference, and I'm not going to stop until Riverside is a place where every student, no matter their background, no matter their race, has the same opportunities to succeed." Her words reverberated through the room, and by the end of the meeting, Sienna received a standing ovation. The administration, moved by the student support, pledged to review their scholarship policies and actively work toward more inclusive practices. Months later, Riverside introduced a new scholarship program specifically designed to support students from marginalized communities. It wasn't just about academic excellence. It was about recognizing the resilience and potential of students who had overcome obstacles simply because of who they were. Sienna's fight wasn't over, but it was a victory, one she shared with Dr. Bradley, who had stood by her every step of the way. In her final year at Riverside, Sienna was invited to give the commencement speech. Standing in front of a sea of graduates, she reflected on how far she had come, from the girl who had been told she wasn't good enough to the woman who had helped change an entire system. "Success is about more than what you achieve," she said. "It's about what you do with success. It's about helping others and making doors open for others. If the doors won't open, we'll break them down." Sienna left the stage with her diploma, knowing her journey had just begun. She fought for herself, her community, and future generations. She spoke out against injustice and left a legacy. That was success,